remembering I had a dream about this flute, and there was like another little hole right next to this hole. And I realized that I just hadn't been covering that at all. And now that I found out about that little hole next to this hole and learned to cover it, um, then I could really play this thing. Unfortunately, that's not true. I just need to cultivate more air and practice some. Greetings, friends. It's been a while. Gemini Brett here. I just had a beautiful experience with Moon and Venus, and then just for a little bit Mars this morning. And I wanted to share a little bit about it. So the name of this video is Moon Connects Venus and Mars. Let's talk about how that can be generally true, and then I'll tune into how that might apply to today, February 7th, 2016, as Moon will translate the light of Capricorn Venus to Capricorn Mars from kind of far away because the Moon is significantly out of balance. All right, so just like generally speaking, how can Moon connect Venus and Mars? Well, it really depends on your cosmic kung fu, where I first began my study, then at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, now the Turning of the Ages Mystery School, Venus was seen as divine feminine and Mars as sacred masculine. And so like that was my approach with our neighbor planets for a while. I will say that two things have kind of shifted that for me. One, challenges by beings in my community in the Northwest where I lived at the time, just kind of looking at gender dynamics in general. And I remember when I was giving this talk at a music festival up in the Orcas Islands of Washington, and was kind of getting out, kind of spreading the word. Yeah, I'm going to give this talk about Venus and the divine feminine. It was like, the feminine, right? Like it was some kind of bad word, right? This kind of like thinking of the feminine and the masculine was this like, trapping us in this binary duality consciousness that would keep us from ever attaining the oneness. I mean, I come from a tradition, an alchemical tradition, that kind of looks at, no, the route to the oneness is through kind of cultivating a relationship with each of the, well, not two, the sun and the moon, or maybe the Mars and the Venus, or however you want to look at that, right? And then the Heros Gymos, the sacred marriage, like those two forces now being cultivated uniquely, independently, individually, now come together, right, in their marriage. And then they birth the divine child who is that, hermaphrodite, if you will, right? Like, so the two come together, right? But it's like, if you don't get into the truth of like the binary dualistic reality of our incarnation, right, you can't birth the one that is unified. Anyway, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, that's kind of at the heart of the Western alchemical and mystical tradition. I shouldn't just say Western. I mean, gosh, go to India and China and all over the place, right? So, and maybe that's dated or who knows. Anyway, so one thing that kind of shifted the way that I work with Venus and Mars was through that challenge, like not only that day at that particular music festival, but also just like was sitting with clients for some time and realizing that kind of like Venus is your feminine and Mars is your masculine thing, like didn't really let me connect with this person, relate with this person. Sometimes absolutely, and just sometimes not. It's like, okay, well, what do I do then? And around the same time, I was starting to study traditional astrology and really just bringing in dispositorship for the first time. So what is that? In modern astrology, they call it rulership. I don't like that word. In the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, they actually don't even do that kind of planet sign correspondence like that. Daniel Jamario, who was my first teacher, as I mentioned before, he was a student of Dane Rajar, and they were kind of getting to this place where oh, that's just kind of this patriarchal thing. But I mean, I've since come to see the beauty and the glory of dispositorship, and I think maybe I'll even use myself as an example at the end of this flow, to show you, different ways we can look at Venus and Mars. All right. And so I don't love the word rulership. I appreciate actually the ancient term, right, which is that not like Saturn rules Capricorn, but Saturn is the domicile lord of Capricorn, like the landlord. Like we've all experienced that thing, right? He owns the Airbnb. And so Venus and Mars and the moon are gathering there right now, he's going to be responsible if, the refrigerator's not working and needs to be fixed, or he's going to have to deal with the mess they might make, or who knows, And then you can look at those kinds of things, like right now, as I'm sharing, Moon, Venus, and Mars here on February 7th, 2024, did indeed conjoin, or are conjoining, in Capricorn, and Saturn is in Pisces, right? And so Pisces said to be a place where Venus is an honored guest, just as Mars is said to be an honored guest in Capricorn. On one level, Saturn might appreciate that Mars is kind of like there in Capricorn hosting this Moon, Venus, Mars thing. But Saturn, from a traditional point of view with Venus, has a mixed reception or a generosity now, because Venus is said to be exalted in Pisces and Capricorn said to be Saturn's place, right? And there's like a connective tissue that opens up with your astrology when you look at this idea of, well, essential dignity, but really this idea of like, whose house is this, and that all the signs are the domiciles of particular planets, and it helps you kind of get from one place to another. I mean, we can really get lost in that, especially when you get lost in like debility and that, I think. But it really does provide a beautiful, like, harmonic approach. Well, I shouldn't use that term because it means something else in astrology these days, but I mean just like musical approach to help you analyze like the chords that are being created by the different notes of the songs being planets in the celestial symphony. All right, anyway, how does Moon connect Venus and Mars? Besides a specific example I'll show you for today, on one level, it's interesting, there's, from an old school point of view, Moon and Sun kind of represent the queen and the king. Now, importantly, there are many mythic traditions, and in some, the sun is feminine, the moon is masculine, or both one or the other, those kinds of things. But in the, Western tradition, you can read in the Emerald Tablets of Hermes, "'Tis true without lying, certain and most true. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of one only thing. And as all things have been, and arose from the one through the mediation of one, so all things have their birth in this one thing by adaptation. The sun is its father, the moon its mother. The wind hath carried it in its belly, the earth is its nurse." Right. So, I mean, people would just kind of go to, well, the sun is the father and the moon is the mother, like some astrology works that way, right? Well, what about the wind that have carried it in its belly and the earth its nurse? I mean, we're not speaking about two here, we're speaking about four. But anyway, I digress. From the traditional point of view, the sun, the diurnal light, is seen more as kind of a yang force or masculine force, and the moon, the nocturnal light, as the yin force. Yeah. I went to a talk by like an elder I very much respect in Colorado some time ago, and she was saying this thing. It's like, you can see the moon by day, but you'll never see the sun at night. And when I'm sitting at a lecture, I try to just keep my mouth shut. I'm not great at it, and this time I failed. I was like, you ever seen the moon? You ever seen the moon at night? You ever seen Jupiter? Like, you're looking at sunlight, right? So there's this beautiful truth of like, moon reflects the sunlight to our eyes, right? And the myths were told actually that these twins, Diana and Apollo, who would become goddess and guide of the moon and the sun, right? that they were born with their mother on the run from a serpent. It's very much an eclipse story, by the way. But importantly, Diana, or in the Greek Artemis, right, is born first. And then she delivers her brother, some say 9 days and 9 nights later, which brings us to the mysteries of 108 and 216, but let's not get lost there now. Anyway, Diana delivered Apollo, right? Just like the moon delivers sunlight to earthly eyes. Now, for me, that reality, that realization, just by drinking moonlight one night and remembering that I'm drinking sunlight reflected to me, it just completely changed my cosmology. Well, frankly, my religion. And I see the moon and the sun as these kind of archetypal, well, sorry, not archetypal, more literal incarnational devices, and that whole, those rubrics of the Emerald Tablets I just read actually speak to us about incarnation and how the sun and the moon literally are the father and the mother of this. And I don't want to be there right now either. I just want to say this, in some traditions, especially older traditions, the sun and the moon have this kind of masculine feminine thing. And in some newer traditions, especially, that same kind of reality is expressed by Mars and Venus. So one way we might say the moon is connecting Mars and Venus just generally, or Venus and Mars just generally speaking, is through that kind of thread of yin and yang, or of, the Shakti and the Shiva, or, wherever you want to go with it. You can see that caduceus staff of Hermes, right? The Ida and the Pingala snaking about that spinal column of light. You saw me just forget a word in a language I actually don't speak. All right, well, a thing I love to see is I was kind of exploring Venus and Mars in this context again, and my initial approach to astrology is like, oh yeah, and well, Venus is not always between us and the sun. Her orbital path is, and Mars's orbital path is always exterior to our own, right? Like, so Venus and Mercury, they're classified as interior or inferior planets. Inferior does not mean less than, or, it just means below. So they are below the sun, right? Between the sun and Earth. And then Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, exterior or superior, which means above. And there's that really beautiful difference about Venus and Mars being Earth's neighbors, right? And Venus like towards the light, and Mars away from, like towards interstellar space, And there's something really beautiful about that. That really brought me into this idea of like Venus inhale and Mars exhale. And then as I studied more traditional astrology, that actually might work even more with the moon and the sun, or with like the idea of nocturnal and diurnal in general. You learn these things in your study of traditional astrology, that Mars actually belongs to the night sect, along with Venus and the moon. So there might be another way that moon connects Venus and Mars, as moon is the sect light at night. And Venus and Mars are the two other planets that are said to belong to that same religion, to that same sect, the night sect, where the daytime, Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. And Mercury, like all things Mercury, goes both ways. He's neither both, either always, Oh, cool. Hey, I'm just looking at these comments. Don, good to see you. Nadine, good to see you. Buenos dias indeed. And Joseph, happy birthday to ya. Shauna, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for commenting on the thread. It's always helpful. I'm seeing 13 now watching. Just fun. I'm just actually preparing tons of slides on the 13th sign and how it's just not a thing, and how there are not 13 moons in a year, but how 13 is very sacred. I don't have triskaidekaphobia. And 13 is a lunar number in some interesting ways. Like, for example, the moon moves on average 13 and 1/3 degrees per day. So anyway, that's for another time. Actually, that's for Sunday. Yeah, at the Conscious Life Expo in LA. I'll be giving a talk called the tropical zodiac, Earth's sacred geometry. So if you're at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles, which begins Thursday or Friday, like this weekend, we're heading out Thursday, we're heading out tomorrow, please come see me. I will also be on an astrology panel with Rick Levine, Kaylin Castell, my other first teacher, then at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, the Leo King, Raquel Spring, and Rachel Lang, hosted by Shima Moore. I'm very excited to sit on that panel, those amazing astrologers, and trip on the year ahead, like the power of this eclipse that's coming, and maybe even more unique, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction and other things in this year of 2024, if you're into that whole Gregorian trip. All right, well, let's play with some charts, and I'll speak a little bit more about Moon connecting Venus and Mars from a more particular or current experience here on February 7th, 2024. I'm just realizing I want to look in the computer for a particular image to play with you as well as we go along here. All right, cool. It has arrived. So let's get these things on the screen. I'll check in with comments here, hopefully at some point along the way. I won't have too much time to play today because I gotta get to the DMV. Why? Well, I think I'll get back to that. I'm going to finish on a little personal example of these things with me in regards to Venus cycles and the significance of the Moon-Venus conjunctions during these cycles, at least from the point of view of the Turning of the Ages or Shamanic Astrology Mystery School framework. All right, to the charts. So this has not happened yet. This is 12/12. Oh, that's fun. Hey, how many minutes in the well, let me leave that aside. Anyway, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time today, February 7th, 2024, where we will have a Moon-Venus conjunction, at least when viewed from the center of Earth, geocentric, here at the 20th degree of tropical Capricorn, about 30 degrees away from Sun at this time. So this is Venus and Moon as morning stars. Let me show you a few pictures. So this might be my favorite one from this morning. Hopefully that's on the screen. Let me put this little, we'll just keep it around. So I climbed a hill. I guess I'll talk story a little bit while you get to see some pretty pictures. Some months ago, when Moon and Venus were meeting earlier in this quest, Venus was rising in so many hours before sunrise that I was getting up at like 3 a.m. to go see the Moon-Venus conjunctions, which are just the most beautiful things to behold, And they're very important, very powerful. Perhaps maybe especially when you, like I currently am, are in a Venus return process. Okay. Venus is getting closer and closer to the Sun. So let me show you, for example, here's the first Moon-Venus conjunction after Venus stationed direct on September 3rd, and this was September 11th, 2023. At this time, actually, Venus and Sun were separated by 35 degrees. Their elongation in this particular cycle was Venus about 46.5 degrees away from the Sun, right? And that means that Venus is in a degree that's going to rise much longer before the solar degree than like today, where Venus is now less than 30 degrees from the Sun. You see how that works? There's other very important considerations about straight and crooked signs, and I don't want to get lost there right now, but might show up along our way. Anyway, a nice thing this morning is I was out here at like 5:15 a.m. This image would have been after that. This is more like 5:45 a.m. This is taken just not so far from me in the El Sobrante Ridge Trail and the Bay Area of Northern California. There's two places I go to work the morning. Now, first of all, there's actually three. One of them is a window over here in our bedroom. But we can't see Venus there anymore. Earlier in this cycle, when Venus was in northern signs, which are Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. So like when Venus was in Virgo, or when even Venus was in the least southern signs, which are Libra and Scorpio, especially Libra, we could see Venus from our window. And I was staying on a little daybed we have at that window and just receiving Venus light, But now Venus has moved further south. The most southern signs are Sagittarius and then Capricorn, which brings us back from south. So the Tropic of Capricorn is the part of the ecliptic that's furthest south. It's the southern bounds of the ecliptic. It's Tropic of Capricorn. It's the part of the ecliptic or the path of the sun that's furthest from California, right? Down south in the southern hemisphere. So it rises very far south of east. In the northern hemisphere sky, it climbs to a lower altitude than the other signs do. And then Capricorn sets very far south of west. Go over there. It's just like this kind of short path like this. In the southern hemisphere sky, the southern signs, just like they do everywhere in the world, they rise south of east. They set south of west. But in the southern hemisphere, they climb to a higher height. Right? They do this. Anyway, let's not get too lost there. So there's a couple places I go to see the morning sky. One is if you park the car and you kind of jump a fence and it's out this beautiful man-made reservoir where I've seen so many wonderful sky experiences, right? And I got to kind of do the work. But the issue over there is there's a little fence you jump and you're not really supposed to. And even if you're just doing this to innocently like connect with the sky and take a few photos for your friends, you might get a little talking to, and you're much more likely to at 5:45 a.m. than at 3, okay? When it's like dark and nobody's there. Anyway, so there's another place I found recently. It was for the Moon Jupiter occultation not so long ago. And that's like pretty close to my house. And actually, the dog and I walk there all the time from here. But I can drive there and just kind of hoof up this hill, right? And so, look, this was like a Moon, Venus, Mars, Capricorn situation. This is probably the time of this photograph you're looking at here, shown now in a chart. And look, Capricorn, you're probably more likely to get busted in a place where you had to jump a fence, right? Capricorn probably would appreciate if you get your goat on and climb up a hill. See what I'm saying? By the way, I just have to shut a door real quick. Hey, honey. So the decision was easy. Like, deal with the law or like get the blood going, especially because it's cold and I've had this like month-long cold. It was like, yeah, go climb the hill, right? Go do your Capricorns. I get up there and it's cold, and the wind's coming in and I'm just like back to it. And then Venus rose. So one thing I want to show you very importantly is this moon is out of bounds. She's at her southern bending, which is the point in the zodiac square to the lunar nodes, zodiacally past or after the south node. Okay, northern bending is after the north node, southern bending after the south node. Square the nodes. The nodes are what? From Earth's point of view, were the paths of moon and sun intersect. What is this? This is like now, let me rewind time. go back to what I was looking at. All right. So I'm out here and I'm looking at these hills. And so I don't have a flat horizon like this. You know, let me push another little tricky button here in Stellarium astronomy software. Give you more of a glimpse of what I was seeing. And I have moons supersized here, but that's all right. So anyway, I'm looking at Venus. And you would think at this chart that moon rises first, right? What's going on? Well, I didn't expect for her to, because I know my astronomy. And so moon is not on the sun's path, which is shown here in yellow. That's the ecliptic plane, the path of the sun. All right. But all planets have their own orbital paths. Here's the path of Venus. Let's supersize these planets a bit. Here's the path of Mars. This place where Mars's path crosses the sun's path, that's one of Mars's nodes. That's Mars' southern node, where Mars's path crosses the sun's path from the north to the south. Let me click on the moon here. And we'll see moon's path in silver. All right. There's this wonderful rubric in Hermes Emerald Tablets that it ascends to the heavens and again it descends to the earth, achieving the force of things superior and inferior, which again means above and below, right? Well, every month the moon snakes above and below the path of the sun. In the northern hemisphere, northern latitude is above, and southern latitude is below. So when the moon crosses, let me just rewind some days, about 7 days here. And I'll supersize that moon to make this easier to see. Here's the moon. Let me go back a few more. Here's the moon in northern latitude. She's up north of the ecliptic plane. Because I'm in the northern hemisphere, that means closer to me than the degree of the zodiac that moon projects to at the time, which is like here. All right. And some days later, the moon crosses her south node, right? That means moon's moved into tropical Libra and gotten to these degrees. And then she continues forward. I went the wrong way. And now moon is well south of the ecliptic. Well, the most southern point of the moon's path will always be square to her nodes, okay? So the north node at like 18th degree Libra, it's 18th degree Capricorn anyway, it's right here, even more so. And where was this? At this time, like the moon's at like 16 Capricorn. South node's at 17 and a half, right? So she's just coming to her southern bending, yeah? And the truth about southern celestial latitude is in the northern hemisphere sky, it will rise after the degree of the zodiac that the moon projects to. Okay, that's up here. That's called the moon's in zodiacal position. All right. We're down here considering celestial latitude as well. It's called in mundo, of the world, of the earth. Okay, when we show a chart, we're only showing the ecliptic. And we project all the planets there, okay? Well, Venus right now, slightly north of the sun's path, of the heart of the zodiac, of the ecliptic plane, and the moon significantly south. Moon can go, and does every month, 5 degrees, a little bit more north, and then 5 degrees south. And right now, moon's 5 degrees south. Excuse me, and she's 5 degrees south in the most southern sign, Capricorn. Well, along with Sagittarius, okay? And that's why this moon is significantly out of bounds. Let me rewind time a little bit. This is the Tropic of Capricorn, 0 degrees tropical Capricorn. That's the point of the zodiac that's furthest south of the equator, all right? And let me show you where it rises. Can I do this? Nah. Anyway, let's just rewind time and I'll show you when Capricorn started rising. And I'm not talking about sidereal Capricorn, that's sea goat. I'm not talking about Ophiuchus at all, although I love that constellation, and he is right there. But he's not a sign. I'm talking about the tropical zodiac, Earth zodiac, which is bound by the tropics. All right. Anyway, this is where Capricorn rises. I'll just keep my circle there. And what you're going to see is from here, the ascendant, which is where the ecliptic intersects the eastern horizon, it's going to start moving less south, northward. Okay. So I'm going to keep where Capricorn rose south. And you're going to see Venus actually comes pretty close to through that window. Well, look at where moon rose. Let me supersize the moon so you can see where moon is, okay? And I'll rewind time to moonrise. She rose way out of bounds, way further south than the sun could ever go. All right, that's a big deal. And one thing it says is like, this ain't your granddaddy's Capricorn. I mean, Mars might be playing that game. He's actually getting very close to his exalted degree. I mean, the way that Mars Capricorns is probably very different than how Saturn would prefer it. Anyway, here's Mars. But let me bring the atmosphere back in. So there's a moment here where I really got to see this. Let me show you another picture. That's Mars. These aren't in order there. And actually Venus was like lost in this cloud for a bit, just as the moon was rising. So I zoomed in and just played with the moon. I have a bunch of these different pictures where her sickle, her smile, if you prefer, is like illuminating these different trees on the horizon. It was a magical thing to behold. This star, by the way, is one of the stars of the Archer constellation here. In the handle of the teapot. Actually, you know what? Hold on, let me unsupersize moon because it's not Nunki. It's this star here, which is called Tau Sagittarius. Oh, there's actually a name I hadn't seen before. Namal Sadira. That sounds Arabic. That seems like it would be old. So you can see it's kind of in the arm of the Archer, or an asterism that we play with here is called the teapot, which makes me feel like pouring a cup of tea. Let's take the Milky Way away. It'll be easier to see. This is the top of the teapot, that thing, right? And then this is the body and the spout and the handle. And then a fun thing is the steam coming out is the Milky Way, right? And so, yeah, I was just tripping on the moon with the star. So constellations for me are very important. They just are not signs. This is Capricorn. This is the Tropic of Capricorn, not the Tropic of Sagittarius. In our day and age, the Archer constellation hosts that tropical sign, as much as that astronomy as I want to say now. Anyway, so later, Venus kind of jumped, from my point of view, up into a cloud. And then Mars rose. So let me show you some of that business, and then I'll look at some charts. And then I gotta go. Here's Mars. And amazingly, he's a parallel Venus right now. Show you that. Venus parallel Mars, like exactly. And that means, I can show you this on Stellarium, that they like rise in the exact same place. So this is the path that Venus takes in my sky today, and here's the path Mars does. I mean, they're on the same path. So very beautifully, even though their conjunction has not yet happened, it's going to be a bit. They're really traveling together for a long time as morning stars. The Venus-Mars conjunction will happen on February 21st. Here in the 7th degree of tropical Aquarius, all right? But, and let me even see then, Venus parallel Mars, still within a degree, but now about a half degree and separating, whereas today, that they're not yet conjunct in longitude, they're conjunct in declination. They're the same distance from the equator. And this makes them unified by path. So Mars, like literally right now, is just, let me just keep this thing circled and I'll move ahead in time, and you're just going to see Mars is like following Venus, right? It's probably a good thing. Yeah. All right, so here's Mars rising. And, let me go back to Venus. Venus and Mars. It's kind of different than the way that they're taught in astrology, depending on what kind of ears you have, but when you get Venus and Mars together, it's just like, Venus is so much brighter. She's closer to Earth and has a lot to do with albedo, how she reflects light. Anyway, this is like back in time. maybe this is the first photo I got of the moon and Venus together this morning, which is just always such a sight to behold. This is Nunki, by the way. It's a very powerful star. I was taught that it carries the oldest name that we still use today. All right, and this is the only one I got of Venus and Mars, and I had to bring their glyphs in because how would you see them? Venus bright enough to like literally beam through this very thick cloud. It's meant to rain all day today. And then here, Mars is just ascending up into this cloud, right? So I was really hoping to get a good Moon, Venus, Mars picture. I didn't, but I did get a good Moon, Mars, and Moon, Venus, and then Moon, Mars. And so that brings me to translation of light. So there's a beautiful old fabric in astrology. Oh my gosh, I really have to go. Called the translation of light. And this is especially performed by the moon, who will kind of bring the energy of one conversation to that of her next, just like you and I do. So after moon conjoins Venus here, this is 12:12 p.m. today in Capricorn, her next conjunction will be with Mars. So let me just move like hours forward. And we'll see the moon-Mars conjunction sometime around 12:12 a.m. It's earlier than that. But that's a pretty cool thing to see, right? Mars and moon. It's 11:52 p.m. Pacific time, February 7th, right? So between the moon-Venus conjunction at 12:12 p.m. and then the moon-Mars conjunction at 11:52 p.m., moon is connecting the two of them. Now, they're going to have a conjunction anyway, but it won't be in Capricorn. So some look at Venus who's applying to Mars. She moves faster, right? Like today, Venus is moving 1.25 degrees a day, and Mars is moving about 3/4 degrees, right? So Venus will catch up, and she's closing the gap between them. But some say because their conjunction will not be in the sign that currently hosts their travel, Capricorn, but rather in the following sign, Aquarius, that this applying Venus-Mars conjunction does not testify. There's a lot of debate about that. But either way, like moon is connecting their fabric now. So what I encourage for you is to look at what moon and Venus do, or sorry, moon, Mars, and Venus, but especially Venus and Mars do in your chart, and see how Venus is like connecting the fabric of them. So what Venus and Mars do in your chart, and ask moon to bring them together. Okay, so one way we would do that is looking at Venus and Mars in your natal chart, but also looking at the signs of Aries and Libra, Mars and Venus, and Taurus and Scorpio, Venus and Mars. All right, so I just want to show you really quickly this thing. This is my solar return in October of 2024. And wait a second, say what? Oh, sorry, my solar return in October of 2023. Notice how close Venus is to my natal Venus. It's not always indicative of, but typically is of me being in a Venus return period now. They come around every 8 years. I just turned 48, the 6th 8, right? And so it's not just a Venus return, but it's a whole Venus phase return, and it's a Venus cycle return. I was born into the same cycle that Venus and the Sun are performing now. Now, so there's going to be changes perhaps in my sacred feminine. What is that? Maybe in the way I do relationship. What is that? Well, you can also look at what does Venus represent in my chart. I'm a Gemini rising. So Venus rules the 12th of hidden things and the mysteries. And Venus rules the 5th of games and risks and romance and passion. And you know what? Kids. What kind of initiation do you think I'm going to go through? You can see here in the kind of shamanic astrology mystery schools technology or approach to working with the Venus cycle is the descent of Inanna. And as Inanna descends into the underworld, she removes these 7 adornments, beginning with her crown, ending with her red robe, which is why I'm drinking big red robe oolong right now. And I especially will with the next moon Venus conjunction, because that's the red robe, the root chakra gate. So shamanic astrology starts counting these moon Venus gates with each of the Moon Venus conjunctions after Venus stations direct as a morning star in a cycle. She moves, she's retrograde, she's reborn as a morning star, she goes direct. And then every month when the Moon meets Venus, we're descending, Venus kind of getting closer and closer to the sun eventually. And the idea is you spend about a month's time working on clearing out the discord of the energetic center represented here. So last month was like solar plexus chakra, and now it's sacral chakra, right? And I had big prayers with Venus about that today. And then root chakra, and then we go into Venus's time of invisibility, which depending on cycle can go like 60 to 100 days. And then Venus is reborn as a morning star. Okay, well, what's this shamanic initiation I'll be going through? Time will tell. But if everything goes according to plan, and we just had our first ultrasound the other day and things seem great, I'm gonna be having a baby girl, right? Her due date is June 12th, but this is Anna's second baby, my first. And so maybe she'll come early, who's to say? But you know, I'm going through quite an initiation, and through what? Through fifth house, you know, and fourth. I mean, it depends on how you want to slice the thing. You either see Venus in my fifth or ruling the fifth. That's like from a whole sign point of view. Either way, kids. And I'm going through a significant initiation there. You know, it's kind of interesting to look in this quadrant picture that the moon rules my third. Because why do I have to go to the DMV right now? To register my new minivan. Which, by the way, I bought the minivan when the moon was in Scorpio, connecting Venus and Mars, no, Mercury and Mars, because I set it up in such a way that the moon, who at the time ruled the fifth of children, was connecting me, the ruler of the first, and cars, the ruler of the third. Because it's my baby who's coming, who's like, demanded I buy a minivan, and I'm stoked about it. I got to go register it right now. So I really got to go. And so this is really important, you know, like when you're looking at significant things with Venus, well, what does Venus do in your natal chart? Because timings, whether transits, progressions, perfections, directions, circumambulations, whatever, like they activate your natal chart. Yes. In my natal chart, like Laura the first and the fifth is probably designed to like really rejoice in having experience with kids. Now it is a girl child, so you better expect that my relationship with the feminine is about to be reconfigured too. Some of that will also be watching my beautiful partner, mothering our baby, and you know, all this according, if everything goes according to plan. And I will have a registered minivan as of about 20 minutes. I gotta go. Thanks for spending some time with me here today, friends. If you're in LA this week, come see me at the Conscious Life Expo. One of my workshops there, which is Reconnecting to Natural Time, is something I will offer online through my school, I think on February 24th. I don't have a sales page set up for it yet, but that's, just know, save the date, February 24th, and be on my mailing list, which you can do at GeminiBrett.com. I was hoping I could check in with comments today. Sorry that didn't happen, but thanks everyone who's here witnessing this in the present. Please like the video if you like the video. It really helps, you know. Share it around if you'd like. Whether you're watching this now or in the future, I'd sure appreciate you giving the thumbs up to support the work. All right, friends.